I thought about casting young actors and people from theatre or from television in Cuba, but it just made a lot more sense to me to start looking for real people who had real experiences and trying to find the real characters in the movie, and people who could really live in that skin.
When you finally chose the actors that you cast in the movie, what was it about them in particular that made you say, yes, you are the right one?
I had a very specific idea of what I was looking for the characters and who they were. For example, when I met Dariel, who plays Raul in the film, he was surrounded by a bunch of young girls at his school, and they were all listening to him, and he just seemed very charismatic and kind of embodied the character of Raul already, and I knew instantly that he was perfect for the role. It was kind of very instinctive, the casting process, and it made a lot of sense when they came in. And then they all met and they got on really well, and we worked for around a year together preparing them for the film, for actually shooting and getting accustomed to being in front of the camera, being in control of what continuity was and knowing how to make a movie, basically learning how to act.
Well, there's a scene in the movie on the raft where they're talking about dreams, their dreams that they have about what America will be like, because they're trying to flee to Miami.
Pero tú sabes, quiero ir con mi papá a un lugar de esos donde venden esos carros que son rapidísimos y que pintarlo de rojo completo y salir con mi loca de stripper al lado y comprarme un cadenón de esos de oro 24 por lo menos.
And it's a really interesting scene because there's discussion about having cars and gold chains and just all these things that we could think of as stereotypes of America. Now, are those lines that you wrote, or are those lines that the actors just sort of came up with on their own?
Everything in the film was really based on a reality that I was witnessing and experiencing and kind of absorbing as I was in Cuba. I spent a long time there developing the script, and these were dreams that I was hearing from people and ideas of the outside world that I was witnessing, and it was written, but it was very much part of a reality that I was seeing.
So what has the response been to the film in Cuba?
So we showed the movie at the Havana Film Festival in Cuba. Initially, we had a screening for 200 people. 400 people turned up, and they had to put the movie on in 2 parallel cinemas. Our producers spoke to the people from the festival about expanding the screens, and they negotiated and agreed to put the screen on for 1,000 people. Over 2,000 people turned up, and riot police were actually called because so many people were trying to get into the cinema. Since that last screening, we have in effect been banned.
Which is kind of ironic because you intended to make this film for Cuban audiences, right?
That was the audience that I was thinking of when I was making the film. It was extremely important to me that the film would feel real and organic and authentic to a Cuban audience, and that people wouldn't be second guessing if somebody from a foreign country had made the film. So I was really somewhat devastated when I was told that we wouldn't be able to screen it there.
You know, Lucy, there's always a question when untrained actors are used in a film about what happens to them after the film wraps up. And for 2 of your leads, apparently after the Tribeca Film Festival, something really dramatic happened to them. They decided to do something fairly serious.
Yeah, they basically decided to stay in the States, but since they made that decision, the law in Cuba has actually changed, so they can be out of Cuba for 2 years and still maintain their citizenship. So it would give them enough time to get their green card here in the States and return to Cuba and maintain their status in both countries. I saw Ana Lynn and Javier around 3 weeks ago in Miami for the press junket there. And it's amazing because they're on-screen twins, but in actual life they're a couple now, and they're expecting twins together.
So, Lucy, a little bit ago you said that you had made this film with Cubans and Cuban audiences in mind. But how is it that you want non-Cuban audiences, Americans, for example, to receive this film? What do you want them to see when they view it?
Oh, that's It's a hard question because everybody comes to a movie with their own different perspective. But I would say that it's my objective when I'm making a movie and presenting characters that people can empathize with their stories and kind of engage with them and their journey. That's all I can ask for, really.
Lucy Moy's new film is Una Noche. Lucy, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have been able to talk to you.
And Robin, we thought we'd go out on a little music from Anaïs Abreu, a famous Cuban singer that Lucy Malloy collaborated with when she wrote an original song for Una Noche. It's nice music, isn't it?
Yes, and we are awaiting that soundtrack.
Indeed, it's on its way over here. From NPR and WBUR Boston, I'm Meghna Chakrabarty.
I'm Robin Young. This is Here and Now.
very cost-effective and affordable way to
Toussaint. He was on piano and vocals on the album.
Facebook and Twitter to stay connected to your community, to share thoughts and opinions with other listeners, and to get involved with the programs you value. Find out more at cpr.org. Just click on the Contact Us link.
It was sarin, but the UN won't say who did it. Today, Monday, September 16th. This is The World. I'm Marco Werman. A UN report confirms the use of sarin gas in last month's chemical attack near Damascus. The report assigns no blame, but concludes that chemical weapons have been used in the Syrian conflict on a large scale. Also today, a budding correspondence between President Obama and Iran's new president, Hassan Rouhani, has tongues wagging in Washington and Tehran.
This is the first instance that we have of a letter sent and returned relatively immediately in a way that appears to be at least somewhat constructive.
And later, a survivor of the Costa Concordia cruise ship disaster vows to sail again.
It's the last thing I ever do on a ship, jumping off and swimming. If you'll excuse me, I'll be damned if that's going to happen, you know? I'm not going to let that define me.
BBC News with Julie Candler. At least 12 people have been killed during a shooting rampage inside a US Navy complex in central Washington. Police said one suspected gunman had been killed, but another wearing a military-style uniform might still be at large. The police said there was no indication of a motive yet, but no reason to believe it was a terrorist attack. Staff were arriving for work when the first shots were fired. Todd Brundage was there.
I was on the phone and somebody came on my desk and said, hey, this is not a fire alarm. Somebody has been shot in the building. So we went around trying to get people out of the building. And as we were exiting the back door, we noticed him down the hall. He stepped around the corner, we heard shots. And as he came around the corner, he aimed his gun at us, and he fired at least 2 or 3 shots. And we ran down the stairs to get out of the building. And after we left the building, there were still shots in the building.
The US Senate, which is located nearby, has been closed until the remaining gunman is found. United Nations inspectors have concluded that chemical weapons were used on a relatively large scale in an attack near the Syrian capital Damascus last month, in the first official confirmation by independent experts of chemical weapons use in Syria. The UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said their report provided overwhelming evidence of a chemical attack. Here's our diplomatic correspondent James Robbins.
The inspectors say in their report, the environmental, chemical and medical samples we have collected provide clear and convincing evidence that surface-to-surface rockets containing the nerve agent sarin were used on August the 21st. The conclusion of their report is that chemical weapons have been used in the ongoing conflict on a relatively large scale. The UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon said the international community had a responsibility to hold the perpetrators accountable, when he went on to add that Syria had belatedly acknowledged it possessed chemical weapons. The UN Secretary-General seemed to point the finger of blame pretty clearly.
Turkey says its aircraft have shot down a Syrian military helicopter. The Turkish Deputy Prime Minister said the helicopter